What's up YouTube, Cheese here, and welcome to The Platinum Plays. This is a YouTube series where the public asks a question relating to Siege, strats, tips, and tricks, and then do my best to answer. If you have a question you would like answered, please leave it in the comments below, or send me a Facebook or Twitter message. So as you guys all know, today we're covering aim, and more specifically, console aim. I play on Xbox One. Up until this year, I have been using a default controller. I just recently, not recently, a few months ago, I started using an Elite controller. They definitely do help in a way, but I just want to say right now that you do not need an expensive controller, Elite controller, Scuff, whatever. You don't need an expensive controller to have good aim in Siege. Default controller works just fine. But one thing you need to make sure is that your controller doesn't have stick drift. So now, what is stick drift? Stick drift is when your character will move and walk around on his own, or he'll look around on his own. So without you touching your left or right stick, he'll start walking or turning on his own. That's stick drift. And in Siege, that's especially bad because so many of your gunfights come down to that pixels. They come down to those pixel peaks, those pixel angles. And if you have stick drift in your controller, it's going to really hurt you on gunfights like that, because details are so important in Siege. Alright, now I want to get into my settings, at least. But I strongly believe that, at the very least, you should copy my general idea for this, which is a high vertical, high horizontal, lower ADS. Now, you can change those numbers around wherever you want to whatever you're comfortable with, because at the end of the day, sensitivity comes down to what you're good with, right? It's completely up to you. If you can play on 100, 100, 100, go for it. Like, if that's your bread and butter, go for it. If you have to play at 50, 50, 25, go for it. But I strongly believe, like I said, high vertical, high horizontal, lower ADS. As long as you follow that general idea, you're going to be in the right spot for having good aim in Siege. Next I want to cover is dead zone. So left stick, right stick, dead zone. What that gets rid of is that stick drift, right? But if your controller doesn't have stick drift, so my controller doesn't really have bad stick drift, so I have mine turned down all the way. You're going to want to turn down all the way so that when you move your left stick and right stick, your player moves. Your player reacts immediately to you touching that left and right stick. The higher you have your dead zone, the more time it takes for your player to actually react to your movement of your stick on your controller, right? That might seem a little odd how I'm explaining it, but I promise you, if you can have your dead zone down lower, it'll make it better for you. Next thing I want to cover is head level. So as you guys can see in this terrorist hunt, when I'm walking around, I'm always aiming head level. When you come around a corner, you know an opponent is there, you're going to obviously pre-fire that, you want to be at head level. There's no point in you shooting not at the head, right? You should always be trying to aim head level or around there, at the very least upper body. So for example, there are 3 different head levels in Siege. There are standing, crouched, and prone. Most of the time, opponents are going to be either standing or crouched. So what do you want to aim at? You want to aim standing when you're walking around. If you have a feeling that somebody's going to be crouched, well then aim crouched. And the only time that you should ever be aiming at the ground is if you get a call out or the audio cue, like you hear them laying on the ground and you know that their head is going to be prone. Otherwise, you should never come around, say, a corner or into a doorway aiming at head level, or aiming at prone level, sorry. Because if you come around a corner and say you even get the first shot off on an enemy, if you're shooting his feet and he's aiming at head level, he's going to win. He's going to win that gunfight every time, because it takes 1 bullet to the head to kill an enemy, to kill anybody in Siege. So there's no point in you aiming foot level or hip level or leg level, whatever the hell you want to say. You have to be aiming head, always aiming at the head level. If you do this, you're going to find yourself hitting your pre-fires way more often and being ready for shots that you're not expecting. So when you come around a corner and say you're clearing a room left to right, if you're aiming head level around everything, so all the structures that are in the room, you're already aiming head level. That way when you come and your sight lines up, it's already going to be on his head. All you have to do is pull the trigger. That's it. And then at that point, it's all just a reaction of your right finger, of your pointer finger, right? And so it makes it easier for you. The less movement you have to do in Siege to get the kill, the better off you'll be. Next thing is hip fire. So a lot of times when you're running an ACOG and you get into those gunfights that are like a foot away from each other, it's not a bad idea to hip fire. But be careful with this, because hip fire can be extremely inaccurate in Siege, especially if you do it wrong. When you are walking, your hip fire gets less accurate than when your feet are still. So if you're going to hip fire, it helps to try and stop your feet and then do it. And if you can, be crouched. So in most video games, and especially Siege, if you're in a crouched position, your hip fire is even better than, say, standing or anything else. So if you can, try and stop your feet and being crouched. I understand sometimes this can't be done, and so that's how I'm getting into the next kind of tip I want to follow, which is quickscoping. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Obviously, this isn't Call of Duty. Quickscoping is not a primary option, but it is an option, and it's something that you see PC players do quite often. So PC players will walk around a map un-ADS'd with their reticle just lined up at head level, right? And then when they see an enemy, they scope onto the head and shoot. And a lot of times they'll even pull the trigger before their shot is completely on the head. And this is essentially a quickscope. And why they do this is because when they're walking around and they're un-ADS, they have a much larger field of view, they can see around them, and then when they find the enemy, they quickscope and get their sights onto the head much easier. I know this is kind of confusing to think about, and a lot of people don't think that quickscoping is really an option in Siege, but it is extremely helpful in some situations. Last thing I wanted to cover is how I get warmed up, so how I practice my aim. And this is extremely important, because a lot of people think to warm up for Siege, they just run casual games. That is wrong. Casual games do not help you warm up. I don't care what anyone says, casual games are crap. They're strictly just for fun. Alright, just for screwing around and doing stupid stuff. That is the only thing I ever play casual for. So what you want to do is play terrorist hunt. Terrorist hunt, terrorist hunt, terrorist hunt. Don't play casual. Don't say you're getting warmed up with casual games, because casual games make you a worse player. You play against worse people, and then you pick up their bad habits, and it makes you a worse player in the end. So what you should always do is play terrorist hunt. Play terrorist hunt, and make sure you go to your settings, and go to the video, and turn VSync off. By default it will be on, and this is what makes your terrorist hunt run at 30 frames per second, which is horrible. It is so hard to get warmed up on 30 frames per second. It can't be done. And honestly, I think it makes you worse. So turn VSync off. You'll have some screen tearing, but it really isn't a big deal. It's so much better than having 30 frames per second. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I didn't talk your ears off too much. I'm sorry I kind of rambled on there, but this is something I'm extremely passionate about, and I think it's extremely important for the Siege community, especially the console community, to understand how to have good aim, because that's something that we struggle with compared to PC players especially. But anyways, thank you guys again for all the support, and as always, most importantly, never forget, stay cheesy.